everyone, welcome in, and I'm glad to have you here. I'm Kristen Lagarza, and I'm hosting today's session for CloudMotiv. So before we get going, quick house rules. This is a live session, so please drop your questions in the chat box as they come up. And we're saving your time at the end for a live Q&A. So today, we're talking about something almost every growing business runs into. Whether or not they have a name for it yet, the moment your systems show keeping with your growth, and more specifically, why AI, which is supposed to be the fix, ends up making a lot of leaders more nervous, not less. So quick shape of the 45 minutes. We'll spend some time on the problem, the trust deficit around AI adoption, then hear 3 different views of the same problem from Nakul, Akshay, and Akhil. So from there, we'll get into the real cost of AI and the CloudMotiv approach to fixing it. Go one layer deeper on the data and trust with Akhil, and close with live Q&A. To walk us through it, I want to introduce our moderator for today, Deanna Grady. Deanna Grady is our CRO of CloudMotiv, and she spent her career sitting exactly where a lot of you are sitting right now, trying to figure out whether a new tool is actually worth the money and the change management. So, Deanna, over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Christine, and hi, everyone. So I wanted to start with a bit of a confession. Most of the businesses I talk to don't actually have an AI problem. They have what's called a trust problem. And it's not irrational. If you're running a growing business right now and you're being told AI is absolutely everything, the productivity unlock, the competitive moat, the thing your competitors are already doing that you're not, and yet when you speak and ask people to point you to the results, to the actual dollar impact, the room gets quiet. And what we hear over and over is that the apprehension isn't one thing, it's multifold. It's a black box cost. Nobody can tell you what a tool is actually going to cost once usage scales. It's unclear ROI, confidence is very low, and so are your expectations. Confidence is low, your expectations are low, which is its own problem, and it's fragmented ownership. Nobody in the org actually owns whether AI adoption is actually working. So the risk just sits there, unmanaged. And here's the numbers that make this concrete, not just a vibe. 70 to 75% of enterprise AI initiatives fail to realize their intended ROI. And that's not a small miss. That's most of them. What's the why? In our experience, it's rarely the model underperforming. It's actually 3 things: success metrics that were unrealistic from the start, scoped against hype instead of a real baseline, orchestration that breaks down, and the AI works fine in a demo, then falls apart the moment it has to hand off between tools and teams. And outcomes that never get mapped back to KPI leadership is actually tracking. So even when it works, no one can actually prove it. And that's the problem in full. But it's not just one problem, it's at least 3, depending on where you sit in the org. So rather than me flattening it to a single narrative, I want to bring in 3 people who each see a different slice of this. Akshay from the CEO's chair, Nakul from the technical and security side, and last, our friend in the market, Akhil from the enterprise market, given his background on the Oracle side of the market. Akshay, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Deanna, for that warm introduction, and thank you, Christine, for organizing this webinar. I can give you my perspective from a CEO's chair, and even though my title says that I'm the Chief Executive Officer of CloudMotiv, it's always a bird's eye view of how the problem shows up for whoever is signing the check for CloudMotiv. What we have seen is every dollar that a business spends on AI adoption or implementing a new AI tool or essentially redesigning a process workflow, which may or may not be AI friendly, that dollar is competing with every other dollar which that business could otherwise spend on growing its revenue in the near term. We have also seen that most of the vendors sell AI as an outcome. And when I say outcome, that essentially means transformation, efficiency, and competitive advantage. But what actually lands on a CFO's desk is a subscription line item with no attached metric to it. And we feel that's not a technology problem. That's essentially a capital allocation problem. Every dollar which is getting spent on an unproven AI tool or an unproven AI transformation attempt is a dollar not spent on a growth and that which leadership can actually measure. And here's the part which usually stings the leadership of any organization. Without a substantial cost model, artificial intelligence becomes a line item that gets cut first when any of the budgets tighten. And we've been seeing that for the past few months. Whenever there is political uncertainty, that results into business uncertainty. And that not only impacts the regional dynamics, but it impacts the technology landscape globally as a whole. So nobody can defend the spend at the board level is what we have seen, when these type of initiatives don't land where they intend to be. So that's the easiest thing. It's the easiest thing to kill is something which might give you results as compared to something which is giving you results over a period of time. That's my view from the top. Nakul, you see the same problem from underneath, being the CTO of CloudMotiv from the technology and security side. I'll hand it over to you to share your perspective.
Thanks, Arsene. Yes, from the technology side, what has happened is the AI has been put like a bolted onto a layer on top of the existing infrastructure. And that has caused a lot of problems, a lot of issues which remain untraced. One of the significant problem in that area is when a new tool comes in, it just doesn't come as just a solution. There are attacks that come around with it. Data is at a very risk level in terms of getting impacted. So ensuring that there are no data leaks, making sure that the security is in place is something which is losing their grounds. The other important aspect is the integration debt. There's no innovation angle to it, right? You just are, because there's a timeline pressure, it is a bolted, it is not being done understanding your business flows and workflows. They're loaded on top of the existing layer. That creates a lot of integration debt, which comes by support requirement, which comes by the areas whether it keeps on falling through the cracks and in the patching work starts happening. But security is the most neglected aspect since it's a 2020 catch kind of a situation. Everybody is behind making sure that it is adopted, but the risk that security and compliance brings in, it often gets ignored. That's what we have observed in the market right now. And I'll hand it over to Akhil. Akhil, you want to talk from the enterprise landscape standpoint? How are they assessing the situation? Over to you, Akhil.
Sure. Thank you, Nakul, Akshay, Deanna, and the CloudMotiv team for having me. I'm a director of product management for Oracle CX Center of Excellence, covering the front office products. We are the customer-facing arm of product development at Oracle. So from the enterprise market side, the world that I live in today, the barrier to AI adoption is almost never the technology itself. I think it's trust, governance, and the vendor risk. One question I ask almost every customer and every SI partner or the system integrator is, are you trying to become AI enabled or AI dependent? There's a big difference. AI should amplify your business and not become another technology you're locked into. I've worked with some of the largest enterprises in the world, and I've seen a customer reject AI because they weren't interested in innovation. They slow down because they're trying to answer three simple questions. Number one, is the data protected? Number two, can we govern the risk at scale? And then finally, will this still fit our architecture 3 years from now? And when it comes to choosing between the vendors, the vendor risk consistently outweighs the feature risk. So large enterprises in what we have been seeing often choose the platform or partner they trust to govern, integrate, and support over time. And even if another solution offers more features on paper, capability is the table stakes. Governance, execution, long-term partnership are ultimately what drive this decision, like I said. In fact, this is where we focus. This is where focused boutique partners can really differentiate themselves because they're specialized. They often spend more time understanding customers' business, their work, their workflows alongside existing technology investments rather than replacing them, and help organizations realize measurable value without adding unnecessary complexity. With that being said, Deanna, back to you. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Thanks, Akhil, and well said. Leadership can't defend the spin. The technical side can't see the risk until it's live. And the market itself is voting with its feet towards fewer, more trusted platforms. So the natural next question is, how do you actually fix that? Nakul, you've got a slide for this. I think a lot of people are going to want to screenshot. Let me transition it over to Nakul.
Thanks, Diana, for pointing out. Yes, this, I believe, is one of the most important slide in this entire discussion. And it comes with the important cost aspects of justifying AI. One thing you need to understand is AI is not a solution for everything, right? It has to be, it's like a recipe, and you need to have correct ingredients in place to make a good recipe. If you overpower certain ingredients with a wrong set of proportions, it's going to blow up everything. So with that said, we worked with one of our customers and they had quite an interesting problem statement. They ran a sales sequence which ran for a few days and gave a very limited output. And then they again readjusted the sequence by another way, but eventually that also did not result in a better way. CloudMotiv worked with them. They figured out they had a couple of choices. One of the choice was to use the existing CRM's generative AI capabilities to restructure and refigure out the entire sequencing. Well, that would have costed them somewhere around 4,000 credits, worth $4,000, worth $400. Then we worked with them. We figured out that there could be an alternative solution, and we suggested that why don't we take that entire piece of data, put it into Cloud Cowork, and let's try to figure it out. And it really worked for them. They were able to get the sequence done in a better way using just one Cloud license, which costed just $100 a month. The idea here is that everything can be done in 3 steps, 3 simple steps. We need to define the job that needs to be done. We need to figure out the prices for it. Does it require traditional machine learning? Does it require covert? Does it require generative AI or other solutions? And then we need to focus on ROI, not what's happening in market or not the hype around it. What works at a minimum cost at a good quality makes a lot of difference. So that's the takeaway from this slide. You match the tools to the task and not the tools to be used everywhere where it is not required. So having that said, I'll hand it over to Akshay to talk us through about our solutions. Go ahead, Akshay.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nakul. I'd like to share a couple of inputs on what Nakul has essentially pointed out. And then I'll come down to the kind of solutions that we usually propose to our customers. First and foremost, I mean, for us, whether a customer is using a traditional SaaS tool or he already has an AI tool stack mounted on their existing tech stack is a very important consideration for us when we engage any prospect as a part of their digital transformation journey. I'll give you two different examples as to how we have addressed this scenario in different ways. So one of our prospects, these guys are into trading commodities globally. They are headquartered in Zurich, Switzerland, and they have their branch offices in Mumbai, South Africa, and New York, as far as I know. and their business is essentially trading commodities. Right? They buy cheap commodities from suppliers in India and South Africa, and they package it in a way which makes it lucrative and attractive to their potential customers in New York and the European Union. So when these people approached us for a digital transformation journey, we kind of figured out that their legacy systems have already been broken since a while. Right? And bolting AI tools on top of their legacy systems would have been a disaster. What we did was we picked up a new product line which these people were going to launch as a part of their business roadmap. As far as I remember, Nakul, you can correct me, that was tobacco, which these guys intend to repackage and sell it to the more developed markets. What we proposed these people was to implement 3 different types of AI agents, which would essentially address the entire supply chain of procuring and supplying tobacco to their customer markets. Our solution was simple. We proposed them, like I said, 3 different agents. One was a forecasting agent which took care of the demand for tobacco for the next 12 months. The other one was to manage the value chain planning of tobacco, starting right from the procurement from farmers in India and South Africa, and tying that metric to some live indices which these people used to track as a part of their commodity exchange. And the third one was probably a futuristic one, but they kind of bought into it. We proposed them a holistic ERP, which was like an agentic ERP, which would essentially tie all these AI agents together and build one core system on which all of their SKUs can eventually function. So that's what we suggested them. We understood that these people needed a transformation which had an element of AI into it, but our approach was simple. We thought of introducing it for the newest SKU that these people were planning to launch. And once that goes successful and we go live with it globally, then we would roll out the solution to rest of the SKUs. That's one use case, and you guys are free to infer your opinions on how CloudMotiv approached it as a problem statement and the solution that we provided. The other example that I would like to quote over here is of a milk production company that has recently launched its operations in India. And these people intend to sell milk and essentially dairy products down the line all over India. Again, they approached us with a similar problem statement. The only difference here was they knew of AI, like AI was the buzzword for them, but they did not have the underlying IT systems to support the kind of scale and technology which AI would eventually be needing. They are at a very nascent stage of production right now. They're probably selling 50 to 55 liters of milk to a preset target of customers that they've built through their goodwill. So that's an ongoing discussion for us, by the way. So, and we've recommended them not to adopt AI at this point in time. We have recommended a very traditional solution of opting WhatsApp for business. And we would be introducing some level of automation as a part of that solution, but it would still stay as a traditional SaaS approach till the time we see a certain level of growth and maturity in terms of how these people have adopted to these newer systems, and they make use of the existing solution that we have given them. Adopting AI into their tool stack would probably be a far-fetched idea for them at this point in time. And we were very honest and sincere in communicating this to the founder of that company, that this is what we need to do. And they kind of liked our approach, and we should be able to work together and form a formidable partnership with them over a period of time. So, like I said, these are 2 distinct examples of how CloudMotiv has approached a similar problem. 2 customers at pretty similar stages of their growth cycles, and the approach that CloudMotiv CloudMotiv has taken to solve their problem. So to summarize this for our audience, CloudMotiv essentially designs or redesigns, for that matter, the underlying operational workflows which the businesses operate on. And it takes an informed call and a consensus decision along with all the stakeholders and the decision makers, whether that operating workflow needs to adopt AI as a part of its transformation journey, or it should still continue for some time going ahead with the traditional SaaS approach. That's what we do essentially. As a part of our health diagnostic, we have a tool called as Stack IQ. And this tool is it's a very simplistic tool and an approach that we've adopted when we engage any new prospect for our services, or just to give them a realistic picture of where and how the digital dust has accumulated as a part of their tool stack. This tool, Stack IQ, runs through the entire tool stack, and it gives you a very realistic picture of the current utilization of all the systems and technologies that the legacy systems are currently bolted on. The efficiency level is something that Stack IQ focuses on. And once we are able to derive an objective assessment of where the tool stack is for our prospect, then we sit down for a discussion with the decision makers and all the stakeholders. And we take a consensus call whether existing tools need to be ramped up in terms of their utilization, or whether we need an AI tool or possibly a traditional SaaS tool which needs to be bolted on their tool stack. I'll hand it over to Nakul to take you through some specifics of Stack IQ, but that's what Stack IQ is all about. So over to you, Nakul.
Thanks, Akshay. Yeah, so it's a very simple tool. It is nothing fancy, and that's by design. We wanted to make sure that the tool is simple to be used by anyone, have customers experience their tool on their own, and then engage CloudMotiv with whatever outcome they have gone through the journey. So that has been the basis of building up this tool. It's a Cloud Cowork plugin at the moment. It's a very simple step. The beauty about the solution is it is not tied to a particular product or a particular software. It can very well work from everyday solutions such as an HR system to all the way up to analyzing complex workflows, complex AI workflows, and the agents. It's a very simple step. You take down the details about the product or a group of products you want to analyze. It runs through a diagnostic engine. We get the insights, two levels of insights. One is that a detailed Excel sheet for operational team, and a C-level deck that summarizes what's the problem with the system. And it has the capability to take actions after approval by the concerned parties. This is one example, and it's a very common example. Almost every company on this planet uses some or the other way of communication mechanism. This example is for Microsoft Outlook. We ran Stack IQ engine on it, and then we figured out that this was done for an SMB manufacturer. And what we figured out that 47% of the total email was being used by one person. That tells us that there is an imbalance in terms of the workforce work distribution. We also figure out that there were certain licenses which were dormant, and we also figure out that there are opportunities where a lot of money can be saved. So around $2,000 were saved on day one of execution of this project, because we were able to revoke 6 licenses which were there dormant, just sitting doing nothing. We also figured out that there is potential of saving around $3,000 because there are a lot of mailboxes that were shared and not done properly or managed properly. At the same time, we figured out that there are 8 more accounts which were on the way of disengagement. So we could just disable them and save money there. So cost optimization is at the core of building Stack IQ. It gives you these numeric details, not an essay or not a very jargonish kind of an output. It gives you factual numbers which you can use and improve the business processes, at the same time improve the quality and and reduce the cost. All right, Diana, over to you. You want to continue the conversation?
Absolutely. Thanks, Akshay, and thanks, Nicole. The cost breakdown alone is worth the price of admissions, wouldn't you say? Akhil, I want to come back to you. Earlier, you gave us the market view. So procurement, vendor risk, consolidation, and I want to go one layer deeper now. Everything we've covered so far is about the tool layer, the application, the workflows, and the visible cost. But underneath all of that is a layer most of this apprehension actually starts with, and that's the data. So tell us how trust gets built from there.
Sure. Thanks, Deanna. I think the framing of your question is exactly right. In my experience, working with various enterprise customers, what often gets labeled as AI apprehension is really a trust issue around the data and governance layer underneath the AI. People tend to focus on the model, but the real questions start much earlier. Three patterns that we see consistently. First, it starts with the trust in the data. So before any organization thinks about AI models or use cases, they want to answer three fundamental questions. Where does the data live? Who has the access to the data? And how it's actually being governed? You can have the most capable AI solution on the market, but if security or compliance teams can't confidently answer those questions, the initiative rarely moves forward. And we see this as a huge contrast when we deal with customers in EU. They're really focused on the security. I'm not going to say folks in US don't, but the mindset changes a little bit to business outcomes based. But regardless, the trust in the data is first and primary goal for any enterprise. Second is about setting the right expectations. See, AI is not a silver bullet, but it's also far more capable than organizations realize. I see leaders who are cautious about AI while simultaneously underestimating the business value that it can deliver, like I was saying. The business successes don't come from trying to transform everything overnight. They come from solving a specific business problem, measuring the outcome, and then building confidence one use case at a time. And then third, trust is built in layers. You can't skip those. I like to compare to potentially building a house. Everyone wants to decorate the living room first. I've been there, done that, but it's the foundation that has to be solid. Otherwise, your living room won't survive. Enterprise AI works in the same way. Start with your data, put governance in place, then build the AI applications on top of it. When organizations reverse that order, uncertainty quickly becomes a real operational and security risk. So finally, I would like to leave everyone with one thought today. It would be, don't chase AI because everyone else is. Build trust first. Once your data and governance foundation is in place, AI will, come to you naturally. It'll be much easier to govern and much easier to justify to the business. Back to you, Deanna.
Thank you, Akhil. You shared AI is not a silver bullet, and that layered view you provided is a great bridge into where I want to land this before we open it up for Q&A. Because everything we've talked about, the trust deficit, the black box costs, the failed projects, the data layer underneath it all, it's all in service of one picture. What does it actually look like on the other side of this? Today, nobody owns tool adoption. Workflows are bent around old habits. Renewals get rubber stamped on autopilot, and waste stays invisible until the end of the year. On the other side, a single ongoing owner with a weekly read on the whole stack. So workflows, they're rebuilt around what's actually working, every renewal reviewed against real usage, and waste that's visible weekly in dollars, but before it compounds. So that's not a hypothetical. That's the case study Nicole and Akshay just walked through, and it's achievable for most of you on this call. Which brings us to you. We've got 10 minutes left or so, and I want to open this up to the room. Drop your questions in the chat, and we'll take them live across the panel. While those come in, I'll mention if you want the diagnostic stage run on your own stack, that's free for the first 10 companies who come on board, no obligation, and nothing runs without your approval. So be sure to reach out to us. Now let me hand it over to Christine to moderate our Q&A.
All right. Thank you very much, Deanna. We have a question from John David Haw. So it says here, I have a couple of questions. What is the cost breakdown of AI usage? This is for Nakul or Akshay.
Hi, John. Yeah. So your question is, what is the cost breakdown of AI usage? Cost of using AI short term or long term? Right now, the cost of using AI starts with free. Most of the tools, Claude, GPT, Gemini, primary these three, and then some Asia Pacific models such as DeepSeek and GLM. Almost all of them offer free licenses for a couple of conversations. The next immediate tier is $20 USD tier. This tier is sufficient if you are an individual trying to solve something around personal and something around professional life, and something you want help of an AI assistant. $100, which is the next cap, is primarily if you are onto heavy usage of AI, such as doing Canva designs with AI, or there's an audio flavor to it, video flavor to it, heavy research thinking to it, and also if you're using coding such as Claude Code tools or Codex tools. So these are three layers. Beyond that, it's typically an enterprise layer which is customized as per the number of people who is going to use it. So that's how the current structure is. This structure is going to stay as it is for a while. Yeah, so that's the long-term answer to your question.
All right, we have one more question from JD and MC. So let's start with JD. How is your data kept secure? I believe this is for Akhil.
Sure, I can take that. So if you look at it from the lens of Oracle, right? This data, if you're within the Oracle ecosystem, the data resides within our OCI infrastructure, and which is usually compliant on all different levels, HIPAA, SOX, etc. And all those can be procured through our support teams and whatnot, and that's pretty common practice. But this is actually one of my favorite questions. Before we really talk about AI, it's really how you talk about data, and it gets tricky when you're talking about integrations, building an ecosystem with different vendors and whatnot. So there are four areas I usually talk to every organization, every SI partner to really evaluate before having a conversation around, like I said before, are you going to be AI enabled or are you going to be AI dependent? So first is data residency. Where is your data going to be stored? Does it align with the regulatory and organizational requirements? Second, what access control? And this is a CIO favorite question. Will we have access to our data, or is it going to be controlled by the vendor? So who has access to data? Are you enforcing, right privileges, strong, identity and role-based control? I was going to say RBAC. And third, governance and compliance. Can you audit who accessed that data? What is done with it, and essentially demonstrate compliance with your organizational policies and the policies which are required by regulators. And then finally, transparency. You should always understand how your data is being used, whether it's being retained, what controls exist around AI models which are interacting with the data. In my experience, organizations that answer those four questions confidently are able to move much faster with AI adoption because they have established the trust up front rather than trying to retrofit it later. That's why governance isn't something you add after AI. It's the foundation that makes AI successful. As I was speaking about the previous topic that I was covering, the trust. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much for that, Akhil.
You mentioned about establishing trust upfront when it comes to data security and the sovereign layer that sits on top of the enterprise AI applications. In your experience, how long does it take to establish this trust, especially for a boutique vendor trying to enter into the enterprise vendor ecosystem?
It goes from SMB to enterprise. Look, the principle is the same, but your question is more around how long does it take, right? So this goes down to evaluating, what workflows are required, what data is going to be used, and what level of access needs to be provided. So, depending on where you are in your journey, anywhere it can take from, again, I don't want to put numbers here because every enterprise, every business is different, but think about, maybe 12 weeks to maybe 6 months. Again, when we talk about enterprise is much, much longer. See, with enterprise, one thing that we always have to consider, and I'm not trying to digress here, it's never the technology problem. It's about it's more of a people problem, right? So, which takes a little bit longer. And that's why the numbers could be a little bit higher than what you're talking about, maybe a small business.
Understood. And is there a structured way to approach this trust deficit at the beginning? And I'm just trying to think out aloud. Like, are there any steps, like predetermined steps that a vendor need to undertake, if at all they need to reduce the trust deficit and ensure that they are on level grounds with some of the bigger players out there in the market?
Yeah, I'll go back to, rather than saying how the data is kept secured or how is the data handled, same principles. Where is your data going to reside? What access controls need to be provided? All that needs to be put in terms of a roadmap or a milestone map from the SI partner, right? What access controls need to be provided? And then involving the end customer in, what governance and compliance they are looking for. If you think about a vertical of medical, their governance and compliance would be a lot different than HTIM, which is high-tech industrial manufacturing. I'm not saying they are less or more. I'm just saying they'll be different. I hope that answers your question, Akshay.
Yeah, pretty much, Akhil. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Akshay and Akil. There's a lot of questions here that I'm seeing in the comment section. Let's start with Drishti. She's asking, is there a cheap price for students who want to learn AI tools? That's for you, Nakul.
Almost all of the Claude's basic certifications are free. Almost all of the Gemini's basic certifications are free. And same goes with ChatGPT. Other than that, you have tools like Notebook LM, which is a product of Google, which helps students doing a lot of research activities. Let's say they got a book worth 500 pages and they want to review and summarize and figure out what's important, what's not important. They can make use of tools like Notebook LM. It's completely free. So there are tools. It is for students, it is important to decide what goals they want to achieve. At the same time, not become slaves of AI. AI is not an ultimate god to answer everything. The logic, the refinement, the prompt engineering, these concepts are still human and will be human. So those who are learning AI, it is important for them to understand that the concept of prompt engineering is very important and you need to spend time on making yourself good prompt engineers. Next question, Christine.
All right. Thanks very much for that, Nakul. We have two more questions. It's from Ganesh. So this one is for Akil. His question, from your Oracle experience, what's the one thing companies almost always get wrong when trying to cut down their tech stack?
I think I'll go back to building a house, analogy that I use. AI is available in multiple formats today. It's generative, it's agentic, so on and so forth, right? Usually everybody's looking at the most shiniest one. Hey, I want to have an agent I can just type in and say, for example, produce a quote for me, without realizing that, you'll have to think about various APIs. You'll have to think about an MCP server, which may or may not be available as a native functionality or a feature that a vendor provides. And that's where, the cost starts becoming higher. And if you go one step below, it's more about looking at the ROI in terms of what are the business outcomes you're trying to achieve. Do you really need, and again, I'm using agentic AI as an example to answer your question, Ganesh. Do you really need agentic AI or do you need generative AI, right? So evaluating the workflows, evaluating the use cases and tying them back to your business ROI is what I really think companies get wrong when they're trying to cut down their tech stack. And that's usually the way we try to coach our end customers. Like, look, go back to the basics. Let's try to figure out, what are you actually trying to solve, and working our way backwards from that.
All right. Thank you very much for that wonderful answer, Akhil. We still have one more question, though. It's going to be from MC. It says, besides ROI, what metrics do you use to determine whether an AI implementation has actually been successful? I believe this is for Akshay or Nakul.
Take that, and then Akshay, you can add. So once you achieve your ROI, I think the important next step is whatever is implemented, is that scalable? Is that something that is performance efficient? Is it really going to continue reproducing those numbers of ROI? That is, so is it repeatable? Is it scalable? And is it performance tuned? So these are some of the three elements that are definitely important to make sure that the ROI keeps on returning whatever is planned for. Akshay, if you want to add anything on top of it.
All right. So that looks like it's our time today. Thank you all for the questions, and thanks to Nakul, Akshay, and Akhil for laying out the problem from three different chairs: the CEOs, the technical and security side, and the enterprise market. And to Nakul and Akshay again for the cost breakdown and the fix. That's really the full picture of why AI adoption stalls and what it takes to move past it. So if you want to keep the conversation going, our contact information is on the screen. Reach out to us anytime. And with that, I'll turn it over to Christine for final words.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Deanna. We thank you all for joining us today. And the recording will follow this week, and we'd love to hear from you if, today raised more questions. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn as well and connect with each person on the panel today.
I'd like to put one last thought across before we wind up for today. And I'll probably go back to the baseline of whether an organization actually needs to make use of AI or not, because this is a very frequent question that we get from our prospects. And even though it's not part of our discussion today, I'd still like to address that question for the larger audience who hasn't been able to attend today, but eventually they would be able to see our thought process when it comes to AI adoption for businesses in general. Right. So the question we get asked is, do we need AI, or does our business need AI? And we often tell them there's a very subtle difference between what you need and what you want. And we have to differentiate that when it comes to making use of AI. What we tell our prospects is, you might need AI if your competitors are using it to improve their efficiency, their customer experience, or their decision making in general. Now, you might need to use it if your margins are tight. Automations like bolting an AI on top of your tool stack could meaningfully improve them. You might need to make use of AI. Your customers expect AI-powered features, let's say like a chatbot or a personalization or a recommendation, which needs to come up every now and then. You might need to use AI if you want to have repetitive knowledge work, such as analysis, content, data processing. That's currently costing you a lot of dollars, or it's slowing you down in terms of your business outcomes. You might need to use AI if you're in a fast-moving industry where staying behind accelerates your decline, and eventually every tool in your tech stack becomes digital dust. So that's where we feel you might need AI, and making use of AI can actually give you a competitive edge over some of the other peers in the industry. On the other side, you might not need to make use of AI if your business is working well without it, or your customers don't demand it. Your return on interest isn't there. It's just a one-off problem which is highly specialized, or there's a judgment call required every now and then. AI might not be the best approach to approach it, because if you go to any LLM, you'll see at the bottom of it that AI is prone to making mistakes, and you need to double check your responses. And so the hallucination issue is still there, which may or may not be the right thing for you at this point in time. you might not need to make use of AI if adoption costs, risks outweigh the benefits of making use of AI. You are completely better served without AI just by improving the fundamentals of your business first. And that might include working on your processes, making better hiring decisions, having more product clarity in terms of what you're offering to the question to your customers. So when we engage our prospects, the real question that we try to discuss is what problem are you trying to solve as we speak? And if AI is the best tool or if AI is the best solution to that problem, let's use it together. CloudMotiv is going to partner you on the journey and we'll be there at every stage and outcome of your business transformation journey. But if you're looking for something else, just continue with what you have right now and try to optimize the existing tool stack that has been implemented. So that's what we usually talk to our prospects when we get into discovery calls with them. And I hope this information is helpful for all the larger audience who haven't been able to attend today. So over to you, Christine.
Thank you very much for that, Akshay. We thank you for joining us today. Like I said earlier, the recording will follow this week and we'd love to hear from you. So this is our LinkedIn and you can always drop a message. Thank you very much and we hope to see you soon.